many months to come, but weather is weather, so we appreciate what we have working. Just a word about things on the calendar. First of all, don't scurry away. We have a potluck lunch today, so come down and join us for that. After the lunch, after we're all satisfied, there is also opportunity to stay and watch a film. Lisa Ling, who does the Our America series on the Oprah Winfrey Network, did a special feature again on Exodus International a couple of months ago. It was taped here at Hollywood Lutheran Church in April, and it was broadcast in June. We now have the DVD of that. It's about an hour show. Well, actually, it's probably less because, there's always ads, so if you subtract those out, because the ads aren't part of the show, it's less than an hour. But it's a very interesting analysis of what went on with the ex-gay movement and why it basically has come to an end. So if you can stay, I think you will find it very edifying and moving to see what the head of that movement had to say after nearly 40 years of this work, and the people whose lives were harmed or were changed dramatically by what happened in that. So stay for that. Tuesday, food pantry, of course, is our regular concern for our community. If you can help with that, we appreciate your help. If you need food or know someone who does, please refer them to come Tuesday mornings. Wednesday, our potluck and Bible study continues, the study on the book of Genesis. And those of you who've been participating, I like to think that now we're getting to the good part of the book of Genesis in the coming chapters. So please feel free to join us at any time. This coming Sunday, again, a little bit of a special feature in worship. We're going to use a lot of favorite hymns that people have suggested over the last year, and so the music will be maybe a little bit more accessible than every week. I won't be pushing anything that I like. I'll be pushing things that you like, and hopefully we'll have a lot of good singing. Some updates on prayers. Father Hans Kronenberg is in the convalescent hospital in Santa Clarita. He's doing relatively well. I spent some time with him on Friday, and he sends his love to everybody, so that includes all of you. And we hope to see him back among us, hopefully very soon. I talked to Mary Coleman yesterday. She's getting stronger. She's walking quite a bit, but she's still wearing, she said, a humongous brace. The doctor is concerned that her hip not get out of alignment again. So until she can get the brace off, she can't even drive, and that means she can't be with us. But please keep Mary in your prayers as well. The Richards have asked for prayers for Mary Lou Sabat, a very good friend of theirs in Pennsylvania, who has had some negative reactions to a PET scan, something about the dye. She's got other issues, and we're just lifting her up in our prayers. This week also we had a couple of parents come in with their very small child at Kaiser. Donovan Mejia had brain surgery. He's 4 years old, and he had brain surgery for a malignant tumor this last Thursday. So we're lifting up Donovan in our prayers as well. Marie?
Yeah, I'd like to do an update on Scott Waldron. We've been praying for him with his lymphoma. He is going through this new procedure that he's going to Cedars, getting chemo, and then they're harvesting his stem cells, and they'll do this for like 3 weeks or so. Then he's going in like the end of this month sometime, where they'll wipe out everything and then give him back his stem cells, and hopefully this will cure his lymphoma.
So, in other words, override his immunity and try to rebuild it from
So wipe everything out like they do for a transplant. So they'll be transplanting back in his own stem cells.
Wow.
It's really wild.
God bless him. Please lift up Scott in your prayers. These are, it seems like very scary procedures, except we know, of course, that modern medicine keeps getting better if you can afford it. So please lift Scott and so many others who are courageously fighting their own battles. We have a candle lighted in memory of Corey Rosted's uncle, Eric Torrella, who passed away recently in Finland. Please, of course, keep Corey in your prayers as well. Again, welcome. Let us now turn to the readings of the scriptures for this morning.
Today's first reading comes to us from the book of Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I, the teacher, when king over Israel and Jerusalem, applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see, all is vanity and a chasing after wind. I hated all my toil in which I had toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to those who come after me. And who knows whether they will be wise or foolish? Yet they will be master of all for which I toiled, and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned and gave my heart up to despair, concerning all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes one who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave all to be enjoyed by another who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What do mortals get from all the toil and strain with which they toil under the sun? For all their days are full of pain, and their work is a vexation. Even at night their minds do not rest. This also is vanity. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please join me in reading responsively from the Psalm 49. Hear this, all you peoples. Give ear, all who dwell in the world.
You have high and low, rich and poor.
My mouth shall speak wisdom, and my heart shall meditate on understanding.
I will incline my ear to a proverb and set forth my riddle upon the harp.
Why should I be afraid in evil days, when the wickedness of those at my heels surrounds me?
The wickedness of those who trust in their own hearts and boast of their great riches.
One can never redeem another or give to God the ransom of another's life. In order to live forever and ever and never see the grave.
Like the dull and stupid they perish, and leave their wealth to those who come after them.
Their graves shall be their homes forever, their dwelling places from generation to generation, even though they had named lands named after themselves.
Even though on earth they cannot live forever, they are like the beasts.
Today's second reading comes to us from Paul's epistle to the Christians in Colossae. So if you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth, for you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever in you is earthly, fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. On account of these, the wrath of God is coming on those who are disobedient. These are the ways you also once followed when you were living that life. But now you must get rid of all such things: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have stripped off the old self with its practices, and have clothed yourselves with the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge according to the image of its Creator. In that renewal there is no longer Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please rise for the reading of the gospel.
Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 12th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you. You may be seated. Dear friends, grace and mercy to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Yesterday I read with some interest on the front page an article in the Times about a new museum exhibition that was called "Never Built Los Angeles." I guess it's open for the next couple of months at some museum I never heard of down on Wilshire Boulevard. It's an architectural show of projects over the last 80 years which dreamers have thought up for La La Land, but for one reason or another, they never got built, never got them out of the ground. And one of them I vividly remember when it was news over 20 years ago. Billionaire Donald Trump had acquired the old Ambassador Hotel down on Wilshire and thought up this fitting monument for himself, the world's tallest skyscraper at more than 125 floors. It would have made the proposed Millennium Project in Hollywood look kind of wimpy in contrast. But back in 1990, Mayor Tom Bradley was not in favor of the Trump Tower, and I guess neither were the cards. You know, they say it wasn't in the cards, it wasn't in the numbers, whatever, it just never happened. And there are dozens of complex issues, I'm sure, that control the success or failure of those multi-million-dollar projects. And one of them, often in a city like this, is that something else is already built on the spot where you want to put up your big thing. Preservationists helped to stop Donald Trump's tower in their effort to keep the historic old Ambassador Hotel. Well, in today's gospel, we have another rich man who'd been quite successful on his land and who thought to himself, "I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods." And he too was apparently thwarted, if not by preservationists, then just by reality, for as Jesus tells us that he's dead that very night. The parable, of course, is not a warning against building big projects. It's not even against being successful, is it? I mean, there's no hint in that story that the rich man was unscrupulous or immoral, or that he exploited his servants, his employees, or that he defrauded his customers, and that's why he got so rich and therefore was being punished. No, not at all. But I get ahead of myself. The fictitious story that Jesus tells here, a parable, many of his stories are like this, is a response to a real question that was brought to him, or a real situation that was presented to Jesus for comment. With all great teachers, I think we have a curiosity about whether what sounds good, in general, really will make sense or prove to be true in particular, specific situations. And the specifics here is that somebody in the crowd asked Jesus to take sides in a family squabble. "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." I suspect some of us have had kind of, experience with these uncomfortable situations. Somebody's died, the last will and testament is read, and the assets get divvied up, and people may feel like they haven't been treated fairly. this passage is kind of rare in the Gospels, where many individuals would come to Jesus and ask for something or get his opinion on something, but this individual wants Jesus to tell something. You may remember a couple of weeks ago I was talking about two sisters who were in disagreement. Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus listening, and her sister Martha is in the kitchen doing all the work. And there Martha says, "Master, do you not care that Mary has left me to do all of the work? Tell her to get up and come help me." And so today here we have this individual saying to Jesus, "Tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." Well, sharing the work or sharing the rewards and the inheritance, that's not wrong, it is not inappropriate, but I think it's interesting that Luke puts those two stories kind of close together in his gospel, as if to remind us that it's not the purpose of faith, it's not the role of religious faith to settle squabbles in family situations where people get their water hot. So Jesus says in response, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or an arbitrator over you?" As tempting as it is to make a connection with what Pope Francis had to say last week in Brazil, "Who am I to judge?" Jesus wasn't talking about sexuality right then or controversial topics of today, and he wasn't really even giving advice about dividing inheritance. He was talking about an age-old part of human life when he says, "Be on your guard against all kinds of greed." So Jesus intentionally dodges the question of, well, what's fair financially, by calling us to get beyond all of that and to look for something that's more important than who gets what. If we try to use our faith as a moral measure for, every situation that we face in life or for every matter that comes up in our society, we could ask all kinds of questions about, what's fair in terms of wages and benefits and sick pay for those DWP workers, or raises and taxes and job security, inflation, and interest rates, union contracts, pensions, you name it. That stuff is always in the news, and people are always bickering about that. Since I didn't get an education or a college degree in economics, it's not so hard for me to, just echo Jesus. Who set me to be a judge or an arbitrator? Most people, I suspect, are kind of glad if their preacher doesn't offer an economics opinion, because their preacher's opinions don't always line up with what everybody else thinks. On my part, I think the one thing that I raise quite often is an appeal to your spiritual values of gratitude and simplicity and generosity. Values that didn't come naturally to me either when I think about money. I was raised in a family with a brother who didn't want to share anything with me either, and that was before there was any inheritance. But what I believe about gratitude and generosity, I've learned from the Bible, from the Scriptures, and of course from people out there, my neighbor in our world. So what I would say is that the Bible does have an overarching broad view of what might be called economics today. The Bible leans toward favoring the poor, and for the simple reason that the rich usually take care of themselves pretty well. Experts who've carefully studied exactly what the Bible says about wealth and poverty and equity and economic justice have written all kinds of books on these subjects. And I realize it's all pretty complex. But suffice this word of Jesus for us to be clear enough. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Okay, that was then, and this is now. Today, it's hard to make ends meet, we say, because maybe our ends are too far apart. It's almost unimaginable to see how our world is so different from that of Jesus. It's really difficult for us in this rich nation with a relatively affluent middle class in a world full of 7 billion people to think through what greed means and what abundance of possessions means today. If you're anything like me, I think possessions become a millstone around our necks. We have stuff galore in our society. Even homeless people have to rent storage lockers to keep all of their stuff. And the rest of us have trouble getting the car into the garage because of all the stuff that's already in the garage before the car comes home. And then so we hold another garage sale to get rid of the stuff to get the car into the garage. And do we have abundance of possessions? Yeah. What we don't actually see in our world is that much of the stuff that we have has been produced by people far, far away who were paid very little, and it was brought here in big container compartments on large ships that were staffed and crewed by people who are not paid very much either, and then they are put into stores, retailers, by stock boys and other employees who are also paid very little, all in order to keep prices low to entice us to buy more stuff. And if we don't buy fast enough, then things go on sale for 10, 20, 30, 50, 70% off, so that we have to go buy more stuff. And if we didn't buy enough, then they say the economy goes into a recession. It's all our fault. If truth be told, we can't sort out what's necessary to keep the economy healthy and keep all the workers happy and prosperous. What the gospel asks us to do is to rethink all of our priorities as something that are just not governed by possessions. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. So Jesus then tells this parable of the rich man who in effect dies suddenly. You fool, God says to him, this very night your soul is demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So let's pick up a thread here in what Jesus is saying. By telling this story, it's as if Jesus is finishing the thought about who am I to judge? Who made me an arbitrator or a judge over you? By telling the parable, he's saying, you be the judge. You decide whether this makes sense for you. That a man not only strives and builds great wealth and takes pride and settles back to let the clock of his life run out with eating and drinking and merriment. You be the judge, for it's game over for the rich man. And without notice, it just happened. What was the point of it? A well-known heart doctor, incidentally, wrote not long ago that the first symptom that many men have, that they have heart disease, is sudden death. Think about that one. The first symptom they ever had was sudden death. That too is a reality of life, whether it's disease or illness or injury or a plane crash or being the victim of violent crime. Life is short. Life is unpredictably brief. You be the judge, Jesus is saying. So it's up to us to determine what is right and whether our striving means anything. What's the point of accumulating assets that you're not going to be able to keep? What benefit is all the stuff that you accumulate only to be sold off for a few bucks at your children's garage sale or your neighbor's garage sale after you're gone? What benefit to strive for riches and prosperity and comfort, knowing that all of that stuff is forfeited or lost, whether by wear or tear or theft or age or sudden death? So in the first reading, the teacher of the book of Ecclesiastes calls all of this vanity, meaning emptiness, chasing after wind. It's often a matter of whether the glass is half full or half empty, isn't it? And he says it's an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with. But it seems to me that his glass was kind of half empty. He had a half empty way of looking at life. A few years ago, Pastor Luther Martell was here among us, and he told a charming parable of his own about a grandmother who had her two small grandchildren over one day and offered them cookies and milk, only to discover in the refrigerator that she didn't have enough milk for a glass for each of the kids. So she gave each of the grandkids a half a glass of milk and the cookies. Of course, they were very excited. Not bad, we think, because after all, the cookies are the main thing, so the milk is, just part of it. But the children discovered that when they went to dunk their cookies in the milk, that it was only half full and they couldn't get the cookie down inside the glass to the milk. A lot of kids, I suppose, would have gotten into a fight over that kind of thing, but these two little angels decided that if they poured the one glass into the other, it was a full glass of milk, and they could both dunk their cookies into the milk. It became a win-win situation. Well, what does the gospel suggest about gratitude and generosity and a full glass? It doesn't demand that the brother divide the family inheritance, but it calls us to realize that when God's grace is shared rather than hoarded or stored, that life is better. And it's not an unhappy business. It's vanity to hoard. To live by grace is to live generously. So the rich man, unhappy that his barns weren't big enough to hold all the stuff that he had accumulated, might have had another solution. He might have given away what he couldn't store. He could have filled his neighbor's barns. He could have shared what he had. He could have lived perhaps more happily in a world where he was blessed by the gratitude of others for everything that he had shared with them. I can't live his life for him, but my friends, I think this is the model of life that we have in the way that Jesus lived his life. And it's the life he offers to us. You be the judge. Amen.